Hey there! On today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how I practice on practice skin and kind of how I use my pattern. I'm going to be using the Tina Davies ink. I just like the darkest one so I can see really well. And I'm just going to take you guys through my thought process on my approach to patterns and then how I work on practice skin. So your view is kind of my view, my point of view, where I'm kind of sitting behind the practice skin. And I guess that's my first recommendation to you, is to make sure you practice sitting mostly behind so that you are replicating your experience with your client. Today I'm going to be using a Jen Boyd blade, and this is a 15 needle blade. The practice skin that I'm using is from PMU products. You can get those on Amazon, and it's cool because you can use it inkless. So if you don't have a lot of time to practice and you don't want to make a mess, you can do so without any ink. Although I recommend, if you're really trying to improve your technique and make strides as far as application goes, I would recommend practicing with ink. So you can practice loading the ink onto the needle, making sure the ink is dropping, and you can really tell if you are working at the proper angle or not. So ink is the way to go if you have the time. So 3 things we're going to cover, and I will jump right in. Again, I'm going to talk to you about technique and how to get great results. I'm going to talk to you about my approach to patterns, because I'm pretty passionate about that, and you'll see as you watch me work what my pattern looks like and how it's kind of not a pattern. And I'm going to talk to you about really how to practice and why it matters. It's so important to practice for improvement, and I'm going to tell you how, because a lot of times we talk about practicing in our industry, but a lot of people are like, but how long, things like that. So we're going to cover all of those things in today's video. If you guys like that, keep watching. Feel free to comment any comments, suggestions, or questions in the comments, and I will answer you. And let me know if you'd like to see more videos like this. So first, let's talk about my approach to patterns. As you're watching me work here, you may notice that I am not following a perfect, crisp, beautiful artwork type of pattern. I don't like stamped on patterns. I think it's gorgeous when people do it, and I admire it, and it takes significant discipline and skill, but I don't feel like it transitions well into real skin, and I don't like stamped on kind of perfect patterns in real skin a year and 2 years down the road. So I choose not to practice that way. So if you're watching this video and thinking, oh, that could be cleaner or neater, it's intentionally not perfect, because no one's eyebrows are perfect, and I feel like that makes the most natural result. So that being said, your technique should be perfect, and I want you to work cleanly when you're practicing, but you'll notice that I don't follow, like I said, a set pattern. I do follow rules, and that means that I follow like kind of directional patterns, and you can find other videos on our channel regarding zones and like how I approach each zone. But that being said, I just want to point out that if you're practicing and you feel like your pattern doesn't look like something you saw on Pinterest, it's okay, because you're an artist and you can create your own style. As long as you're making it clean and it looks like an eyebrow, you're in good shape. So I'm going to jump in and talk to you about some tips that are going to help you get the most amazing results out of your practice and why it matters. But I do want to point out a few things as the video moves along. You'll notice that I am practicing my stretch, so it's not as tight and as good as what it would be on real skin, and certainly there's nothing to stretch. But putting your fingers there and starting to practice that process and that behavior will only help you when you get to real skin. So if you notice my left hand, I am spending a lot of time separating the skin and drawing. Also, I do want to point out, when you work on practice skin, it's really hard to wipe off. So what you're going to see next is, after I get done with like what I consider a first pass, I'm going to wipe that off. And what I found works really well for that is coconut oil. So it's thick enough that you can lump it on there, but it's oily enough that it's going to really wipe things off. So that's what you see me using here to wipe off all of my practice skin ink. As you can see, it's quite messy. So sometimes I'll wet the paper towel and then apply more coconut oil. But this is why I really feel like it's important to have a spacious, well-lit area with all of your stuff, because they can get messy and then things get out of control quickly, and before you know it, you're not practicing cleanly, which is important to translating this to real skin, where you're going to want to be really neat and precise. All right, now we're gonna go on and I'm gonna do a second pass. So as I do that, I'm gonna talk to you guys about my most important tips for getting amazing results and why practice matters. So a lot of us look at other artists' work and we think that they're amazing. We do a lot of comparing on Instagram and our trainers' work. I know I spend way too much time looking at other people's work and constantly trying to figure out how I can make my work look even better, which I think is a good thing to an extent, you know, to the point where it starts to get you down. But that being said, you really want to practice as often as possible so that you can get your technique where it needs to be. You don't need a bunch of classes. You don't have to keep spending thousands of dollars to get better at the same technique. Most of us, myself included, we just need to spend more time practicing. So I recommend a minimum of 2 hours a week, and that could be done all at once if that's what makes you happy, or that could be done 20 minutes here, 15 minutes here. Some of it could be just drawing in a sketchbook between clients or at your kid's soccer game. But it's really important that you get those 2 hours a week minimum, and more is even better, especially if you don't have clients right now. As I mentioned, I really recommend that you practice in a quiet, clean space that's well lit. And obviously that doesn't always happen, but it's the goal so that you can work in an environment that you would work on real skin with and get the best results. It's really discouraging when you just are working in a space that is not as neat and you don't have all your stuff, and then your practice doesn't look as good. And I really think it's a good idea to record yourself. So you can set something up like what I have here, like a tripod. The tripod that I have is set up really high so that you can see. There are definitely tripods from $20 to $100 on Amazon. So I would recommend grabbing one. It's great to record your client work, which is good for content purposes, but it's also really important that you can see your needle angle and the speed that you're working at and really kind of judge what you're doing. It's a little harder to think about those things while you're working. But those are my most important tips for getting the most out of your practice session. Lastly, today I just want to go over my reminders for technique. I do have some additional videos that go into great detail about technique, but here I'm just going to talk to you from a high level about what I'm doing as I practice. So the whole time I'm working, I'm constantly thinking of a few things. I'm thinking about stretch because that is so important, but I obviously can't practice that super well because I'm working on practice skin. But I'm also thinking about keeping my needle angle 90 degrees. So I want my blades to hit the skin at the most sharp point. And so usually that means you want your tool to be about 90 degrees from the skin, give or take a few degrees. So that's most important. And that's going to allow you to get the most crisp, clean cut and get the most ink in there. The other thing I want you to work on practice skin is to make sure that you're getting enough ink in on the blade so you get good saturation, that you're not overloading your blade so that you have messy ink everywhere, because on a real person, it just makes a mess of your outline, and I think it's hard to get clean results when you have ink everywhere. So as I close this video, I just want to point out and really emphasize that I think as an artist, practice is so paramount. As a trainer, when I train new students, the people who spend the most time practicing are the most successful. So I really want to encourage you guys to make sure you're putting that time in. It's not the fun part of the job, but it's so necessary. And if you need assistance, I want to let you guys know, and remind you, we have a free forum that is a safe space that we moderate with a smaller group of people than these huge Facebook groups, and we'll actually help you out. So it's www.browandvohio.com/user-portal, and you can go there and ask your questions. I'm here to help. Anything goes, technique, business, but feel free to go there and create a profile, and I will talk to you guys soon.